Well, I just want to preface by saying that no matter what points I make in this video regarding Master Duel's monetization, that it is nowhere near as bad as Duel Links monetization, and hopefully if Konami knows what's good for their damn business, that Master Duel's monetization will never reach even as close to as bad as Duel Links. So this isn't a sort of a ranty video on how the sky is falling and how this game's going to be impossible to play free to play unless you put in real money into it. No, that's not what that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that coming from the perspective of someone who has played this game since launch and has generally used most of his free gems to just build new decks every month and like pull from the selection pack and all that stuff, that I've noticed, and many people I've talked to have noticed, that the gems that they're free to play gems that you use now recently in the year of our Lord and Savior 2024 February, whatever season this is, they don't go as far as they did back when, especially near the Master Duel launch date. So to illustrate my point, I can show you, I guess, the cost of what decks looked like before and what they look like now. So first, let's take a look at some example early Master Duel meta decks and just how many URs, or I guess how little URs you needed to complete these decks, might be a better way to put it. Mainly focusing on the in-archetype URs or the deck-specific URs, since not the staples like hand traps or Called by the Grave or extra deck monsters like Axis Code or Unicorn, since these are cards that you can use in any deck. In fact, most decks will use these anyway, so you're only using it, crafting these ones, and then you don't have to worry about them again. So if you're playing Master Duel for more than a few months, you're gonna have these staples by then, and then these aren't gonna contribute to the cost of decks anymore. And also, I don't think it makes sense to count the cost of like hand traps like Maxi or Ash for one deck, but not another deck, when realistically every deck you're gonna play is gonna be using these anyway. So whether you count these or not in the UR calculations, might not even change how many URs are in the decks to begin with. So, anyways, the main specific in-archetype URs you need for a deck like Tri-Brigade here, I'll keep in mind that this is actually the expensive version of Tri-Brigade. They're actually the other meta variant of Tri-Brigade in early Master Duel was Zodiac Tri-Brigade, and Zodiac Tri-Brigade did not even have these rescue cats. So keep in mind that this is actually the expensive version of Tri-Brigade. And by expensive, that means you have 3 rescue cats, and in the extra deck you have 2 Shregs, and I guess I will include Cypher Lord Omega as part of the UR cost for this deck, since this is a card that you mainly just run in decks that play Gamma, and not every deck does play Gamma, so I guess it's fair to count Omega into the UR cost for this deck. I suppose it would also be fair to include Almirage in that case, since not every deck makes use of Almirage. But even then, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 URs you need to build this deck, not including staples. And again, with staples, the more you play the game, you're just gonna get them eventually. Like after a few months, you shouldn't need to craft many more staples anymore. So the cost of staples won't even factor into your deck anymore. But yeah, 7 URs, which is about 210 UR credit. So let's look at another example. So next, let's take a look at a deck that was arguably even cheaper and better than Tri-Brigade, which is Virtual World AFK BFD Turbo. Remember when this card was legal? Jesus Christ. So one thing that should jump out at you is that there are no in-archetype or deck-specific URs in the main deck at all. In fact, the only URs you'll find here are the staple cards. Everything in the Virtual World engine, as main deck-wise, caps out at SR and lower. So this is a budget build, and I say this was the best deck of the format, since it had basically the most tops in the top 100 of the Duelist Cup by far out of any other deck. And even when the Adventure Engine was out, not every Virtual World build even used the Adventure Engine. In fact, I think it was more half and half, and this list is basically based off of one of the top 10 Virtual World deck lists that did not use the Adventure Engine. So you didn't even need those URs to play this deck and still have it be basically the best deck in the format. And all the URs or for the decks are basically concentrated in the extra deck. You have a Zoken plus Crystal Wing package, which is 2 URs, a Shen Shen plus this level 16 Crow, that's 4, and then you have a Constellar, Ptolemy M7, and of course VFD. So that's a total of 6 deck specific URs. I don't want to include Zeus, since Zeus is pretty much a staple and it's going to be used in a lot of decks. So it's something you should just get naturally as you play this game. I don't want to include specifically into the cost of Virtual World, but yeah, 6 in archetype or deck specific URs, not including staples, so which is about 180 UR credit that you need to basically fully build this deck, minus the staple cards. So yeah, keep that number in mind. Let's move on to the next one. Another meta deck Lego in early Master Duel was Adamantipator, and if a deck was going to be expensive, this was going to be something like this, like a 60 card version of a deck that requires you to run triple Grasslook Screener. And even then, let's say, just look at this deck list at a glance. Despite there being 60 cards, the vast majority of these cards are not URs. In fact, again, most of the URs in this deck are just staples. Once again. And you see the in-archetype cards and the main deck monsters, all of these are SR and below pretty much. And you only have like a few tech cards outside of that Grasslook Screener that are URs. So you have the 3 grass, and then you have a snow, since I guess you're running grass, so you might as well run snow. And then 1 Dragon Buster Destruction. Which even then, in 60 cards, having only 5 specific URs that you need, not accounting staples, out of 60 is insane. Imagine, I mean, I'm sure you can think of what 60 card decks look like now, like branded, and how many URs are in those decks. So, and then for the extra deck, you have a Baron is a staple, so, and same with Axe Code, Appaloosa, and Unicorn. So I, again, don't really need to count these, but you can count Union Carrier, since this is a deck that uses the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. So that's definitely part of the deck cost. And then Savage Dragon is not a card that's used in every synchro deck, so I guess you can include as part of the cost here too. The 1 Dragite and the Halki Fibrax, which you could argue is a staple at this time, but not every deck did play Hulk. In fact, the last 2 decks I showed did not use Hulk, so that should show that the Hulk wasn't used in every deck. So you can count Hulk towards the cost of this deck, I suppose. Which means you have Union Carrier, Savage, Dragite, and Hulk, which is 4 URs in the extra deck, and then the 3 Grass, Snow, and Dragon Buster, which is 9 cards in the main deck. 5 cards in the main deck, for a total of 9 URs in 60 cards. By the way, that's the most surprising thing. I thought, just the fact that you would have to run 60 cards would just rocket the price of the deck up, but no. In fact, the majority of the main deck monsters that you want to mill with grass happen to not be that expensive. So even though it's a 60 card deck, 9 URs times 3, which is 270 UR credit that you need to complete this deck. So keep the amount of UR credit you need to build these decks in mind as we move on to what current decks look like. So let's move on to some of the current Master Duel meta decks. And here we have Super Heavy Samurai, which is as recent as the second to last selection pack, which means that the selection pack for this is actually still in the shop right now. You can actually just roll and just pull these cards. And immediately what should jump out to you compared to the old Master Duel decks is that the main deck is chock full of ultra rares. Previously when you have the decks like the Tri Brigade and the Adamantipator and Virtual World, those barely had any main deck monsters as URs, and which is a big deal because the main deck monsters are generally cards that you need multiples of, usually 3 of. So the fact that they're UR means you have to pull additional copies of them to be functional. It's not like an extra deck card where you only usually need 1 or at most 2 copies and to be completely done for the deck. But no, here we have a 3 Motorbike, 3 Wakaushi. Immediately, this is already 6 URs in the main deck off the bat. And then you also need 2 more Monk, which is another 2 URs. So that's 8 in archetype URs already. And then you have the Therion King Regulussi. And this is not, by no means, this is not a staple card. Barely any decks run this. In fact, it's like Earth Machine and it's this. So you most likely won't have this card. Or, and plants, I guess. Oh, my bad. I forgot Rikas and Avalon. So there's like 3 decks that play this card. So most likely you're gonna have to craft this card too, or obtain it in some way. So that's 9 URs that aren't staples already. Then you move on to the extra deck. There's some debate. You can debate on whether some of these cards are staples or not. Like Baron is a staple. Apple is a staple. Elf is probably considered a staple now. You don't have to include these into the cost of the deck, but Savage, give or take, probably by now. We can be lenient and just count this as a staple to not including the cost. But Excel Stardust is generally not a staple. In fact, I don't think most decks really run this card. So yeah, I'll include the Stardust Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon in the cost of the deck. I'm not even including the regular Stardust Dragon. That apparently, according to Master Duel meta, 40% of Super Heavy Samurai players run the normal Stardust Dragon already, and that is definitely not a staple in most decks, and that's definitely another UR that you have to craft somehow. But I'm not going to include that just for example, just for the purpose of this deck list. And they do run the level 12 Super Heavy Samurai Brave Masarawu. My Japanese fucking sucks, but yeah. So this is another one, and then Gigantic Champion Sargass is another with the Merrymaker. Is another popular choice since it helps you flex into 4 material Zeus, and it also searches Regulus. And yeah, so if you want to count all of these, and then also, by the way, another common variant of Super Heavy Samurai is the Scythe version. So if you were playing Scythe, that would be yet another UR included into the main deck, which I'm not even counting for the purposes of this example deck list. But we have 9 URs in the main deck, and then we have at least 1, 2, and then we can include 3 more non-staple URs in the extra deck. So that's 12. 12 URs you need to build this deck, not including staples. So that's about 360 UR credit that you would need to build what I would consider a streamlined version. This is, again, there's more other variants that use even more URs in the extra deck, and that, or play Scythe, for example, instead of the Ancient Gearbox and Tundra, which is this is actually a budget package. This is a SR and this is our N and R. So if you were running Scythe, these two would be replaced by another UR. But at least 360 UR credit to get all the URs, not including staples, for this deck, which is 90 more UR credit needed than the 60 card Adamantipator deck, which was. And again, the 60 card Emancipator deck was pretty much as expensive as it got for meta decks back in early Master Duel. Now, I'm sure the deck that everyone's been waiting for me to get to is Snake Eyes. Now, oh my goodness, this is the most expensive 40 card deck I think I've ever seen in my life. Let's just go over it briefly. So we have 3 popular. Why 3 popular? Because we don't have Bonfire, so you actually need this as a pseudo starter. So a lot of the top lists have been running 3 popular, unfortunately. So 3 popular is somewhat standard now. 3 Diabellstar, also standard. Again, no Bonfire, you need consistency. 2 Flamebird. In Pure, this is pretty standard. The 1-for-1. The 2 original Sinful Spoils. I'm not sure about the second one. I haven't seen anyone run it, but definitely there are a lot of people that do run 2 Sinful Spoils just because, lack of Bonfire and lack of consistency. So this does help out. It does act as a pseudo starter, even though it's a bit of a weaker one. And then 3 Wanted. So just in the main deck, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 13, 14. 14 URs that aren't considered staples. 14. 14. That's already more than the entire Super Heavy Samurai deck. We haven't even gotten to the extra deck yet. Okay? So the extra deck. you can let's count Savage, let's count Baron, let's count these as staples. Linkuriboh. Okay, you know that I don't own one? Linkuriboh is absolutely not a staple extra deck card. I've played this game for 2 years. I have not needed a deck. I've not played a deck that needed a Linkuriboh. This is absolutely something that a lot of people will have to craft. So you can add Linkuriboh to the list. Thankfully, Heat Soul and Sunlight Wolf are in the structure deck. Thank you. We don't have to worry about that. And then IP is a staple. And then Promethean Princess and Zealandis. These are not staples. Prior to Fire Kings, or Fire King, Jesus Christ, can you imagine? Prior to Snake Eyes, Zealandis was used in exactly like 1, maybe 2 decks, and those were Marincess and like I think Draco Slayer or something. You know, just very common, very popular decks, right? So chances are a lot of people, you know, this is a card that you might not have for other decks. If you might not have this card if you need it for this Snake Eyes yet. Same with Promethean Princess. Promethean Princess was not used with like. Pretty much, there was no deck that actually really played this prior to Snake Eyes coming out. So this is just another card that's factored into the cost of the deck. And with these 3 non-staples in the extra deck, and then the 14 in the main deck, that's 17 non-staple URs, which, let's do the math, that's 510 UR credit that you would need to craft this deck from scratch. And that's one thing. Keep in mind, when I said from scratch, right? So I know there are a lot of people that are making new accounts to build this deck, and they're in for a rude awakening because when they do, on top of the 510, you know, the 17 URs that are just for this archetype specifically, since you're making a new account, you know, you also have to factor in the staples, I guess, and the factoring in all the extra deck monsters you don't have. So a lot of people were making new accounts to try and build this deck and failing, or like getting unlucky and not getting enough UR pulls with their free gems, and then actually not being able to build this deck until they hit a certain rank. You know, sometimes you might not complete this deck until you get all the way into Deep Diamond or something. But, like, this is this cost is insane. At 510, that's more than the 3. Remember the 3 early Master Duel meta decks I showed you? I think 510 is more than the first 3 of those decks combined. Okay, maybe not all 3 combined, but I think with the UI credit that you need to build this deck, I think you could build 2.5 of those first 3 decks that I showed you from early Master Duel. So I guess one anecdote I'll leave you with is from the one and only Trishula TTV, the guy who grinds Master Duel on Twitch more than probably every other Master Duel streamer combined. And one thing he's known for is making complete meta decks on fresh accounts and then getting those to Master 1. So Trish has the method down on how to obtain gems the fastest, what solo modes to do, which packs to pull, and then crafts a bunch of SRs just to open a bunch of packs for free to try and get URs out of them. Like, he has that down to a science, and usually, you know, by the time you hit silver, or like by the end of silver, your deck you should have enough gems to basically complete your deck on average. And Trishula tried last month. Trishula tried to climb with deck on a new account, and the deck that he used was none other than, or that he tried to use none other than, was Vanadium. Is it Vanadium or Vanadium? Let me know in the comment. So this is like basically as close to card for card as the list that Trish tried to build as I can get, and Trish did this before we even had Crimson Dragon out. So in fact, I just changed this. I took out the Excel Stardust and I put in the Crimson Dragon just to. But yeah, they're both UR, so it shouldn't change the cost too much. But yeah, this is a deck list that Trish tried to build. I say tried because he did finish the climb, yes, but after he did his usual method for gems and to get all the gems, then pull all the cards and all that stuff, the usual time when he would be done building a deck and it would be complete and it would be perfectly ladder ready, Trish did not have his deck complete by then. In fact, in order to finish this deck, Trish had to enter the event on this new account with the loner decks to get all the gems from the event, just so you could get more pulls just to finish off the deck, which normally you would definitely not need to get 3k gems from an event to finish a deck from scratch on a new account. But this deck, it just happens to be so expensive, and this was as recent as like 2 selection packs ago with the Monadium stuff, with Reinhardt and the Calarium stuff. You notice he doesn't even have the 3rd Calarium because I don't think he got the UR credit for it. But yeah, just looking at this deck, right? You have 3 Reinhardt, 3 Reinhardt, 2 Visa Starfrost, a Fenrir, which is no longer in circulation, and Raidslog, which is also no longer in a selection pack, so you gotta craft these. And then Perla Rhino also has to craft this, and then 2 Calarium. Ideally, you should run 3 of this, but you know he only could get 2. And then yeah, for the extra deck, Double Vicious Astronaut, a Visas Amritara, a Chang Ying, which I guess is free now, so you don't have to include that. A Dissipator, Crimson Dragon, 2 Scareclaw Lighter. I don't even think he could afford the Chaos Angel in his extra deck, so I think he ran a Dark instead of the Chaos Angel. But yeah, maybe you could not include the Chaos Angel and just run a Dark. Just to keep it as fair as possible. How do you spell that? Okay, Dark. Okay, yeah. And then Unicorn, Appaloosa, and Axe Talker. So first of all, let's just go over the in archetype, like the non-staples that you would need to build this, which is 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 13. So 13 URs in the main deck that are just non-staples, and then the extra deck 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 URs in the extra deck. So that's a total of 19. So that's 5. If I'm doing the math right, that's 570 UR credits. So even more expensive than Snake Eyes. Not including. That's not even including the staples, because again, Mike Thomas, aka Trish, he was building this deck from scratch. So he also had to fetch out the URs for all the hand traps and all the staples too. So you could imagine, like, this is the degree to which how expensive the current Master Duel meta decks are, if you want to build them now. And you can, you notice I didn't even include my brand list. So I can show you like an example brand list. But branded is a 60 card deck that, you know, runs a hell of a lot of URs as well. So like, yeah, this is just like at the point, which is kind of like the point I'm trying to make right now, is that even though yes, you can technically build these decks free to play, technically, as of right now, I'm trying to build this deck. I haven't actually completed this yet, so I do have a bit of UR credit that I can use to finish one of these decks. I can't finish all of them, you know. But yeah, this is your gems definitely do not get you as far currently in terms of building meta deck as they did once before. Which is the main point I was trying to make with this video. I suppose sort of got a little rambly, but if you'll excuse me now, I'm gonna try to pull some more feet and use if you're wondering where all my gems went, yeah, I make good decisions. I make good financial decisions. Don't listen to me for them.